Hello, fans. Welcome back to Harnessing Your Wealth. I want to thank you for joining us today. This is Billy Peterson. I want to thank you for joining us. And I also want to remind you before I go on to leave a review on the show, to follow the show, and we'd be thrilled to get your feedback and comments. You know, we talk a lot about wealth building and finance on this show, and we also talk about success stories. Many shows actually have been dedicated to the concept of health and why health in our country seems to be a mess and staggering in so many ways. But there are ways around and over and through getting to the answer of what's causing you potential health conditions. And that's the reason I have our guest today, Jim Prussack, who is a licensed physical therapist. He's based in San Diego, and he's created quite a following with the concept of the mind body concept and how pain is not really what we think it is and really where it stems from. So I really want to, I can't stress enough how important it is to listen to this show because every one of us are going to deal with some sort of condition from time to time. And you may know people who are suffering from some type of chronic pain and who are thinking about going in for a surgery or who have been diagnosed with some kind of incurable disease like I was many years ago. Fortunately, I was able to overcome and heal from that. So without further ado, Jim, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Billy. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, Jim, how did you get involved in this line of work? I know you are a licensed physical therapist. You started out kind of probably in that mindset of treating the body only and looking at symptoms from a standpoint of, hey, something's broken in your body. How did that all transform into what you do now, which is look more the emotional side of things?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, yeah, I trained traditionally as a PT, came out of school in 1998, started practicing in outpatient orthopedics, treating a lot of sports injuries, treating a lot of orthopedic injuries. And what I started to see probably about maybe 4 or 5 years in, I was seeing a segment of people that just weren't getting better from all the practices, techniques, and strategies I had learned from PT school. And at that time, I was looking for more education. So what I did was I actually traveled to Australia, spent a whole year in Western Australia. And that was my first foray into understanding pain science. And actually had gone there for a manual therapy or manipulation type course working on the body. And what I did is I came home actually with a whole different understanding of pain, especially chronic pain. And when I came back to the US, I started practicing again. I was in workers' compensation. I was seeing a lot of people again struggling with recoveries. And I started thinking more deeply about this. And I started finding out that stress was a big ingredient for people in their symptoms and causing their symptoms and keeping their symptoms going. And from that point on, I started to just keep, going deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole, you could say, which is not very conventional or traditional. I found some other people in this field. Some of your audience might have heard of Dr. Sarno. He's sort of a pioneer in the spine body field, and a couple other practitioners. And I started to learn more and more and infuse that into my practice. And finally, maybe it was about 5-6 years ago, I left my traditional physical therapy practice and started doing this work exclusively. When COVID hit, it really took off just because we weren't able to see people in person. So at this point, I pretty much do all my work online, which is interesting. A lot of people say, you're a physical therapist. How do you work with people over the computer? And we'll get into it today. But a lot of the work I do is with conditions that don't have, structural cause or chronic conditions or things we can't really treat with traditional medicine. So that's sort of how I got into it. And it just keeps evolving over time.
It's a great story, and I'm so thankful. I know a lot of other people out there who have found their way across, and I call it across the river of pain, the river of uncertainty, and the depression of not knowing if there is any answer, if there is any hope. But to finally reach that and to then look back, you really feel a strong sense of responsibility to help others come across, because I truly believe our medical industry is in the dark and leading us into uh, places we shouldn't be. So maybe speak to the reasons why that is, and maybe what you've seen in the circles that you're a part of how, what kind of progress we're making to change that.
Yeah. Well, it's slow progress. The traditional medical model, it's not incorporated into medical school, physical therapy school, all the medicines. And then we have the psychologists, and they don't delve into any medical stuff. So there's these silos where nobody's crossing this chasm in the middle, which is this mind-body connection. It's very simple. It's not complex. We have a brain that's wired up to our bodies, and the brain is the most important, powerful organ in the body. But we basically excluded the brain in understanding a lot of physiological conditions. I think part of the reason why is we don't scan the brain. We scan the body completely. We do MRIs, we do X-rays, and those things are really good for finding things like tumors and fractures and cancers and things like that. But what we know from the research is it's not very good at indicating if the pain is coming from an area of, let's say, disc degeneration or even something like an impingement. So we see a lot of data coming out where we get MRI, X-ray findings that are not necessarily the cause of people's pain, but yet doctors are just exclusively looking at the body. So brain scans is an area that's going to emerge, I think, in the next, decade or two. And I think once that happens, we'll be able to delve more deeply into this, because the brain is what controls, like I said, everything. That's where your thoughts, your emotions, your history, a lot of people who have been through, let's say, trauma or PTSD or adverse childhood experiences, that's all stored in the brain. And we have our programs or patterns. There's a lot of learning, there's a lot of conditioning, beliefs. And these things are really powerful. And I think a lot of people just have cut the head off from the body. And doctors included and medical people, don't even ask very simple questions. I know you mentioned to me off air, you'd gone to dozens of doctors and not one doctor asked you about anything psychological or stress related. And I think that's the takeaway today, is that stress, psychological stress, can cause the same exact physical symptoms as some type of physical stress or physical injury. And I think that's really important to understand. It's just that your medical doctor or your traditional medical provider probably is not going to ask you about that.
When I was going through that, I was trained in my mind to do like most people do, which is trust the medical profession, trust the doctors, trust the surgeon, especially. So I don't know how many MRIs when I had my terrible 6-year, 7-year exposure to back pain, chronic back pain. It would not leave me. I did not know what was wrong with me. And of course, every MRI, and of course, they had different findings every single time. And, you get, answers like microfractures, and you have certain deformities in your spine. And of course, they go back to say, whoa, did you have some accidents? And I said, well, I was a jockey for many years. I rode racehorses. I had a lot of accidents and spills. Oh, yeah. Well, there's your answer right there, bud. I mean, coming back to haunt you like 30 years later, and I think, man, is that right? I mean, this stuff is just going to pop up later in life. Like, oh man, I'm doomed because, I lived my life. So you start telling people, don't do anything, don't lift weights, don't bend over, don't stand up too soon. We're all taught to be careful. And I think that's one of the things I love about Sarno is he said, to hell with that. Live your life. Don't be afraid of the lifting weights. Don't be afraid of exercise. Go back to doing what you do and
Yeah.
find enjoyment in that, and quit worrying because you're not broken, and don't think that you're broken. Always think emotion. And one of the posts that you've posted that I really like is, if you can sum it up into one little statement, it says, treat your symptom as an emotion and see what happens to it. And
Yeah.
see, that's where they've gone wrong, right?
That's where they've gone wrong. And like I said, it's nobody's fault. It's just that we're in these silos, and literally doctors and medical people aren't trained in this, and we don't look at the brain. But yeah, these symptoms that we have in our body, they're physical sensations, right? We feel something, it's physical. We say, yeah, I got a pain in my back or a pain in my foot. Okay, it's very real. And we want to make sure there's nothing wrong in your body. So we'll rule that out. But we need to understand that emotions are also something, they're feelings. That's what we call emotions, feelings, something we feel as well. So they're very closely related to symptoms. And the actual definition of pain, if you look it up from the National Pain Society, is it's a sensory and an emotional experience. So they put that word in the definition. It's just that nobody ever asks about it. So emotional pain, because of the way the brain centers overlap, can actually cause physical pain in your body through the autonomic nervous system. So this is very real. It's been studied, but again, it's not mainstream medicine. So, just like I'm sure you went through your journey, nobody was asking you about stress and things that were happening when your symptoms started. And that's a really important thing for your audience to take away. If you're struggling with chronic pain or chronic symptoms that aren't going away in a normal healing time, or doctors can't find anything wrong, you might want to look at stress and think about that in terms of your life, what was going on when it started. And even going further back, a lot of people have upbringings or childhood that were difficult. They had adverse childhood experiences, which is something I screen for in people. Mm-hmm. It's a scale. And we know if the more you have, the more risk you have of having some type of ailment as you age into middle life.
Yeah, a good book there on adverse childhood experiences is called The Deepest Well from Nadine Burke Harris. And I think she summarizes all of that extremely well. Talk about issues coming later in life. It's kind of like, I think, what was her name? Carol Truman, something. I think she said, emotions buried alive never die. So these are the things that we have to kind of change the way we look at it. And I'll go back to one thing you said a minute ago, and I'll take it a little further, because even if, when you said doctors can't find a reason why, sometimes I think they do find a reason why, or they try to. They try too hard to find the reason. In my case, yep, you have an incurable autoimmune disease. So what they labeled me with was ankylosing spondylitis. And those of you listening, you may be labeled with, oh, I have irritable bowel syndrome, or I have fibromyalgia, or I have Lyme disease, or I have whatever it might be. There's a million different diseases almost out there. Actually, I shouldn't say a million. I think last count I saw was something like 12,000 known diseases that are coming forth every single day. And you wonder why. And I think from my standpoint, when medical community doesn't know what to say about that symptom or set of symptoms, they want to give it a label, and then they want to try to find a drug for it. And then you're hooked. Then you're locked in that trap. So I would always consider, even if you have been labeled with a disease, always think in the terms of the emotional root cause. Where did it come from? Why did it all of a sudden this manifest? Is there a way to think your way through that? If thought alone brought that on, couldn't thought alone take it away? Or changing the way you're thinking about it? That goes back to the whole placebo, nocebo ideology. So I'm a big believer that the brain is the most powerful or functioning system in the world, on the planet. And if the brain can bring it, the brain can take it away if you give it the power. And so that's where I've been. I see people who go get MRIs, right? And I'm sure you deal with a lot of this, Jim. They have an MRI because they have chronic back pain, and voila, they have the something that the MRI shows. And so therefore a surgeon needs to fix it or treat it. And the last statistic I saw in back surgeries was the failure rate somewhere near 85% from back surgeries. Now, I want you to fill me in on, enlighten me, because you have a lot more background with that than me. But why do we keep going back to that and thinking that's the answer?
Well, simply training, I think, and probably money, to be honest. That's where doctors are trained in. Like if a doctor is all of a sudden going to prescribe journaling, let's say, or contemplating your emotions, the doctor's not getting paid. So I think there's just a big system at play here. One of the doctors, Dr. David Hanscom, you may have known that name.
Yes.
He wrote a book, Back in Control. He is a spinal surgeon, and he literally walked away from his career as a spinal surgeon. He could not do it anymore. And he shared some stories where literally he was helping people heal, get better with a lot of the stuff we're talking about. And he would present it to his team at these meetings, and he would just get shown out the door. Even though people were getting better and he was saying, hey, we can help these people, they did not want to hear that. So you're
without
up
surgery.
against the big institution of people livelihoods. I don't think people mean wrong. I just think that they don't understand this. And also their careers are defined by what they do, which is I'm a surgeon. So I need to do surgery too.
Mm-hmm.
But you're correct. The results and data are not very good for a lot of spinal surgeries.
And I read a report and actually wrote about it in my latest book. This was on knee surgery. And renowned knee surgeon, Dr. Bruce Mosley, he did this study at Baylor Medical Center. He took a whole group of patients who had knee pain, supposedly they thought needed knee surgery, right, to fix their knee pain. And so he decided he's going to do an experiment, and he divided them into thirds. And he on one third he did the real surgery where he went in and cut it and scraped it and sewed it all back, and then did the normal process. The second one he just went in and cut and just filed a little bit, and then the third he made an incision but didn't do anything, and then made it look like, hey, well, you went through the same exact surgery. And then he assessed the results afterward. The findings were astounding. The patients that didn't have a single knife inserted into them, basically called a sham surgery, had the same exact healing rate as those who went under this all the other stuff. So you wonder what happened there. Of course, we all know. I think we know is the placebo effect. When your mind tells you you healed, you did. And that's the crazy thing to me is we don't study that more often and try, if we were really taking money aside, putting it aside and saying, how can we help people get better without all the links and side effects and other conditions that might come about? How can we just help them get better naturally? That's what fascinates me. Tell me more
Yeah.
about what you're studying right now. What interests you?
Yeah. Well, gosh, there's a lot. Like you said earlier, the brain is the most powerful organ. We see the placebo effect, which again, that name, like some people think of it as a bad name. I think it very positively. That's the brain effect. And we know the brain can start causing changes even before you take a pill. For example, they've proven that if you're taking an ibuprofen, you literally start creating the same chemicals before you take that pill, or taking a sugar pill. Even telling the patient you're taking a sugar pill, it will still cause the effect because the expectation of the brain. So we have a lot of what's called expectation. It's called predictive coding. The brain takes shortcuts. That's the learning part of your brain. So your brain can literally learn and then actually create that reality or create that symptom per se. The opposite of the placebo is called the nocebo effect, nocebo, and that's basically a negative effect from your brain. And there's some amazing, interesting studies about that as well. There was a couple that came out around Lipitor, cholesterol medication, and they were rotating people on and off of that sugar pill, real pill for a whole year. And they found that people were complaining of muscle pains and other types of symptoms and side effects. And they found out that 90% of those symptoms were from the nocebo effect because they were still having them on the sugar pill. So they may have read somewhere, you get this side effect, that side effect, or they were a little nervous about it. So it shows you the power of your brain, that the brain can do this. The brain can dial up or cause these things in your body, very real symptoms, but there's nothing, they're not coming from, let's say, the pill or maybe from the injury. So it is very fascinating. And there's more and more data that's emerging as we move forward. We know that people who catastrophize, that's a negative, worrisome thinking, anxiety, for example, those people have way worse outcomes from all types of surgeries, knee replacements, hip replacements. There's a study that found that catastrophizing by itself can cause your pain to spread in your body and go somewhere else. So a lot of people who are struggling with anxiety, with worry, OCD, stress in their lives, that's all from the brain. And that's going to factor into your body and could be the main cause of the symptoms you feel in your body.
Yeah. And going back to where these symptoms came from, I think this is universal for most of us, where we look back to a certain event and a physical event. So we have, let's say, knee pain, neck pain, back pain, whatever it is, and we attribute that to something that happened to us. We fell down, we lifted something heavy, we tweaked it, we remember that precise moment. And a lot of times there will be a precise moment because we feel it immediately. Somehow it triggers. It's there. But reading Sarno, he put it very well. He says, you can hurt yourself, but that's called an acute injury. And an acute injury will heal. Your body knows how to heal if you just give it the proper space, time, and rest. So why is it that we are still going back to that every single time? We cannot get to the point where you accept that you didn't permanently damage yourself by slipping and falling on the ice, and now all of a sudden you're going to be living in a life of pain, or you have bone on bone. I hear that so often. I have to have my whole knee replaced because bone on bone. Sarnos talks about that being a normal abnormality. We get gray hair, we lose our hair, we have wrinkles, we age, but all these things are normal as we grow older, and they're not going to cause pain, but we've been led to believe that they cause pain. Mm-hmm. Tell me what you've seen there, and what do you tell the people that come and see you, your clients who are dealing with that and who are trying to overcome what they've been told from the medical community?
Yeah, it's tough at times. We're trying to undo some of these nocebo beliefs, you can call them, because people were told, the doctor shows the person on a scan result, look, you've got arthritis in your hip or your knee or something like that. And they say, yep, this is what you got. And, we're going to have to give you injections, or you're going to need surgery. But what they don't do is go deeper and ask some very simple questions. What did you do at the time? Was there some injury? To just wake up with it one day? Started gradually? And more importantly, was there any stress or stressful events happening around the time this started? Such a simple question. And I have so many stories of this. I can share a couple. I had one woman in the UK who had this persistent sciatica pain down her leg. She had flown to New York City to get a special surgery to remove our piriformis muscle. They thought it was pressing on the nerve. It didn't work. She tried all these other treatments. The first time I saw her, the simple question, was there any stress happening at the time? Yeah, my father passed away 3 weeks before. I was sitting at work working, and this pain started. Okay, well, that doesn't sound like a physical injury. Another woman, COVID, which was very stressful for many people. She had never had any pains in her body. She was exercising and doing all these things. She got COVID. She was terrified. She was scared to death that she was going to give it to her family. She was worried. She started developing neck pain. Goes to the doctor. The doctor says, oh, let's do an MRI, an X-ray. Oh, you're full of arthritis in your neck. You've got all these foraminal closings on both sides. We need to do surgery. Well, you know what? She went through the surgery. It took away her neck pain, but what we know about these conditions, it didn't take away her stress. So then she started getting knee pain. Mm-hmm. But this is what can happen is one symptom can go to another. Dr. Cerno called it a symptom imperative. And that's when I saw her and I said, look, you don't have anything wrong with your knees. I said, you were perfectly fine before. You probably didn't need the neck surgery, but you got it done. And then she got back to full life. So this is where stress comes in, and it's very powerful. It's invisible. People don't believe it can cause pain and cause symptoms. They think, oh yeah, maybe it makes it a little bit worse. Or they don't believe it has the power to actually produce a symptom, but it absolutely does.
Right. That's the most powerful statement. I think if anybody's listening, pause, go back, listen to that again, because I've heard that so many times. Oh yeah, I'm sure it can perpetuate it, but they kind of brush it off as just, that's just a sideshow. I'm going to go see the real doctors, leave me alone. I have so many people roll their eyes when I try to tell them about this stuff. People that are suffering and they suffer, but they have to sometimes, unfortunately, come to their own conclusion that whatever they're doing is not working. And they finally get desperate enough that they'll say, all right, what do you know? Tell me what you know. Let me read a book. I'll listen to you. And they might finally open their eyes to the situation. But we have been led, I'm the best spine surgeon, the best neck surgeon. They'll fly all over the world for that stuff, right? They want to be cut. They want to be cut into. They don't want to listen to anything else because they don't believe it. And I'm here to tell you guys, you can get mad all you want at me for saying this, because I used to be you. I used to laugh at this stuff. This was a whack sideshow. This was ridiculous. But this is 100% where these problems arise when they're not getting better, when you're not getting better. I don't care what you did to yourself. I don't care if it's a car accident, you fell off a horse, you fell off a ladder. Okay, you're going to heal. Just do it. Let things heal. You're not going to have these conditions all of a sudden manifest and just stay with you forever. And when they
Yeah.
do, you can rest assured, this is me talking, you can rest assured that there's something bigger going on, an emotional issue that not allowing your body to heal. You have to stop thinking physical. You have to.
Yeah.
And
The
I,
body heals. That's a really, really accurate statement. The body heals regardless. If you're stressed to the tilt, your body is still going to heal. Maybe it's a little slower, but the bone heals, the tissue heals in a certain time frame. So as soon as you go beyond a normal healing time frame, then you start asking questions. That's when we start wondering, okay, why isn't it? Why are you still having the pain? And people think, oh, well, I have this old injury and it must be that. But that's not necessarily true. They did some work in Australia on people who had multiple motor vehicle accidents and they couldn't turn their necks. They're having physical therapy. They're making limited progress. And what they realized is when they took the people back through and talked about the accidents, that they had a little bit of post-traumatic stress from having multiple accidents. So they talked them through that and reduced their fear, and they were able to replay that in their mind in a way, and they were able to calm down about it and look at it differently. What happened is their muscles relaxed, because that's an example of how our nervous system goes into fight flight. So for example, if the brain learns and has been through something, it can stay turned on and it can tense up and tighten up your tissues, and then that's how you get pain.
mm.
Okay, and people say that all the time. Oh, I got a stiff neck. Oh, I got sore. I got trigger points everywhere. And unless you have a local injury there, it's not coming from there. It's coming from your brain and nervous system. And a lot of people end up with chronic type stuff, and that's more likely to be from your brain and nervous system than it is from your body.
Is that because your brain just creates these neural pathways that just stay firing, and it just, so it's kind of like a trail or a path that you've walked so often that it just becomes worn down, and so those signals just keep firing, and you're, because you keep feeding the same chemicals into your body from your thinking.
Yeah, that's part of it. So it can become learned, conditioned, they call it association. But also on a deeper level, the brain is working off of what's called a threat danger mechanism. So if the brain feels under threat or danger, and that threat or danger could have happened years ago, let's say, for example, PTSD, a war veteran, right? We know that they come home, they're completely safe now. There's no war anymore, yet they can still be saddled by lots of chronic pain and lots of symptoms in their body because their brain hasn't never settled back down. So it stays in a state of fight or flight. That's one example. Another example could be somebody who's stressing out every day, just completely stressed to the tilt. Yeah, you're going to feel that in your body. Or there's some relationship stress, or there's this or that, or there's some old stuff, like we said, from the past, something that happened when the symptoms started that wasn't resolved. It doesn't always go away. That's important to understand. It can stay stuck in your tissues, like with the motor vehicle accident people. They had a brain that never fully got back to relaxed state. Their muscles were still guarded and protected in their neck, so they wouldn't get injured again. So that's how the brain works. It works off what's called a danger or threat. Same way your body works. If you twist your knee, that's a danger or threat in your knee now. You're going to have a pain there in your knee
Right.
because you twisted your knee. But if your brain feels under danger or threat, can cause the same knee pain that a physical injury can.
Right, right. Such amazing thing that the brain can perform all these things that we don't really realize. And you talked about the conscious thoughts, but some of us who go through life and it just kind of becomes our natural state of being, we don't even realize that we're stressed and tense and worrying. It's just part of who we are. So it's natural, it's normalized. And so, what do you do with people like that? How do you help them to take a step back and really notice themselves?
Yeah, I think people like that is just it's a lot of reflection or a lot of awareness to look at ourselves, because when we are in our patterns, we don't know that's who we are. We're just living the way we live. And so a lot of times it takes somebody else to see that in a person and say, hey, I noticed these patterns. Dr. Sarno he talked a lot about personality traits that people develop as a result of stressful upbringings. And a lot of those we see in people, and those are telltale signs that the brain is producing stress. Sometimes somebody might just be go, go, go person. They never give themselves a chance to calm down. They're sort of addicted to that state. And we need to teach them to slow down, maybe to breathe or do some meditation or calm down.
Mm.
Other people are just very negative. They have a negative viewpoint of everything. And we need to change that type of thinking because they're constantly going to that. And that's creating stress in their body. Sometimes they have life circumstances that they need to deal with, maybe relationships of some sort of partners or aging parents or children, or work situations that they may work through some emotions and stress. We don't always need to change situations, but we need to maybe work with our brain in terms of how we are, reacting to these situations.
Mm.
So it's all in the realm of reducing stress, reducing what we call the threat or danger alarm in the brain. We get that to calm down, which is sometimes just belief alone. Like if you believe that you're okay and not broken, like you mentioned, that could be enough to turn it off. Other people, we need to get their stress down, sometimes make some changes in their lives. So it just depends. But the theme there is just to get the person's brain to come into a more of a relaxed, resting state.
Right. So important that people listening or they share this, reach out to someone like Jim if you know anyone dealing with chronic pain or conditions that don't seem to be making sense. And don't just accept the fact that you've been diagnosed with, all right, this is it. This is the way it's going to be. Symptom management, right? This is not this. There's a way across. There's a different way across, and you can actually heal from all this. So when you deal with maybe a person for the first time, Jim, can you walk us really quickly through what that looks like?
Yeah. So when I get people coming to me now, which is a lot easier because they know about the work I do, I take a full intake. So I want to know everything about them, what kind of testing they have done. Most people I see have seen many doctors. They've seen many medical practitioners already. They've got their reports. We'll look them over and just make sure nothing's there. But I'm looking much deeper. I want to know their whole history. So I'm screening for things like anxiety and depression. I'm looking at adverse childhood experiences, stresses when this started. How's their mind? How do they think? Are they a person who's worrying all the time or catastrophizing? How are they like day to day? What's their personality like? So Dr. Sarno said there's certain types of personalities that are more prone to this. The person who may be a perfectionist, a people pleaser, a goodist, somebody who's overly conscientious or overly achieving. Some of these things put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and they create a lot of internal stress. So we'll look at personality traits. We'll look at how a person deals with emotions. That's another category. So a lot of people, because of upbringings in our society, don't really deal very well with their emotions. They stuff their emotions. And so if you don't express your emotions, well, your body can express them for you. So we want to get people in touch sometimes with learning how to express emotion, to assert themselves. A lot of people who have these conditions have been sort of victims in a way. They've been bullied. They've been treated poorly at some point in their life. And so a lot of it is building empowerment and strength, confidence again. And that's also confidence that their body isn't broken, but just confidence in their life that they can speak up and stand up for themselves and not go to the older pattern, which might be a fight or flight pattern or freeze pattern in their bodies. A lot of people probably heard of fight, flight, freeze. That's your autonomic nervous system reactions to stress. And so that's how I look at a lot of conditions, like where is your system taking you? Are you going into fight, flight, freeze? Are you living in that state a lot? Or are you in a more comfortable, relaxed state? Do you feel more confident and relaxed and calm? Or are you always on edge? You're always worried the next shoe is going to drop or something like that.
Amazing stuff. Maybe last question for me is with people who are maybe a little cynical and who maybe don't trust some of this stuff as easily as others. What do you tell them? Here's kind of where I'm going with that. I was told early on, hey, build an evidence sheet. Build what when do you notice your pain's gone? When is it moving? When is it lower? And when is it higher? And start to write those things down. And then you say, well, it's changed. It's different. It's a different location today. What did that tell you? That immediately should tell you that it's not a physical problem, that it's not like there. It's not a break. It's not a tear. It's not something that's localized. It's something that's moving with your body because it's changing direction. It's trying to get your attention because you haven't processed whatever the emotion is that's associated with it. You haven't dealt with it. You haven't let it out. And so you needed to stop, but you also need to stop focusing. When I was going through my pain, Jim, I swear to God, I think was thinking about my pain 10 times a minute. Like every 10 seconds or every 5 seconds, I would be thinking, how bad is it? How bad is it? What can I do? What can I do? Worrying nonstop. And little did I know at that time, that's what kept it going. That's the fire that
That's
keeps it burning. That's the fuel.
Yeah, that's the reaction we call it. We call it the reaction to the symptom. When it's something like that, so there's a term called hypervigilance, which, like you alluded to with the focus, hypervigilance is a very real thing that the brain goes into when it's feels threat or in danger. When someone has a chronic symptom that's going on and on and on, it can start to make you pay a lot of attention to it, right? And you pay attention to it in a negative, worrisome way. That's putting fuel on the fire. So we have to teach people to break away from focusing on their symptoms all the time, because that literally links it up in your brain. It's like I tell people, it's like putting a magnifying glass on it. When you're looking at it and focusing on it, you actually make it worse. And people start to notice, like you said, they write down when you feel better. A lot of people start to notice moments when they feel better when they're not focused on it. They're engaged in something else. They're completely immersed. They're enjoying themselves. Those are moments to teach the brain to say, wait a second, why don't I have it right now? And then
Yes.
usually what happens to these people is they get back in their car from wherever they were, and their brain goes right back to it and it turns on again, or they get home and it turns on again. And that's okay. That's part of the recovery. So we're just teaching people, like you said, through evidence, through watching and seeing what the symptom's doing, to prove it to yourself that there isn't anything structurally wrong there. This is the brain at work.
Mm. Great stuff, Jim. I'm thankful to know people like you are out there. And when I was going through mine, I could not find resources like you. I traveled clear to California from here to find a doctor that dealt with this. They called TMS. Sarno coined it, tension myoneural syndrome, which is a totally, I mean, it's a benign condition. It's something that hurts and it creates pain. It can create pain anywhere. It's really like a symptom that could manifest in almost any part of your body. And he talks about why and how they come around, and why they come up, but it doesn't talk about you need to worry. You need to be, drastically concerned and stop everything you're doing. So I found one doctor, Dr. David Schechter in California. And now I'm grateful to say people like yourself are out there who know about this work, who know the truth, and you're helping people heal. Last quick question. Maybe give me one or two examples of people that, came to you, that severe situations that you've seen now recover.
Yeah. I have a guy right now who's going to go on my channel. I have a YouTube channel, The Pain PT. And if anybody's interested, you can check it out. There'll be a story dropping soon of a guy who was a triathlete, training for world championships, actually. And he got stricken with some pain, knee pain, back pain. And it totally took him down to the place where he couldn't train. He couldn't do anything. He was living home with his mother and just down and out. And the pain was spreading and getting worse. And we connected and got him going through this work. And he started working his way back again, getting back to life, challenging himself, getting back to exercise. And where he is now is he's actually better than ever. He's requalified for the world championships, and he couldn't even walk before. And we've taken people from being in bed bound, back to life. Many people. So I've seen people where I've started them and they're lying in the bed. You can barely do anything. It takes various amounts of time, but through this work, we can get people back, going out, going to the store again, driving their car again, doing this, doing that. And we see just incredible success. If people can learn about this, can understand this, can apply the principles, you can get over some things that you don't think are possible. Or the doctor said there's no cure. I had a really nice story of a gentleman who had 4 surgeries on both shoulders. They thought something was wrong and they did not work, 2 on each side. He could barely lift his arms. He was only 40 years old, and he started working himself back, doing the work. He started doing push-ups. He said, I'm going to do push-ups every day, a little more every day, a little more, a little more. I'm going to act as my shoulders are fine. Fast forward about a year and a half, took him some time. He's completely pain-free now.
Mm.
His doctor's office called me up and said, hey, can you come and talk to our 6 doctors? Because how did this guy get better? So I thought that's
that.
good,
Love it.
get the word out there.
Yes. 100%. Yeah. Always think emotional. Talk to somebody like Jim before you go schedule surgery. We've all been there, but take it from somebody who's been on both sides of it. Okay. Please, please do not run to a surgeon for some of this pain that you're having. Thank you so much, Jim. How do people reach out to you if they are looking for some help in what they're dealing with?
Yeah, they can go to my website, www.thepainpt.com. And then you can reach me that way if you're interested in consultation. And I echo your sentiment about anything that's persistent, chronic, something that's, if you sprained your ankle yesterday, no, that's going to heal. Give that a month or so or a couple of weeks. But we're talking about persistent stuff or things that, haven't healed. These are things that potentially could be related to your mind. And so I really appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Jim. And you're doing great work. All of you out there listening, thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed that show. Please leave a comment. Please like the show. Follow us on whatever platform that you like to get your podcast, or whatever it is, Spotify, Apple, any other platform. Leave some messages and leave some reviews. Share it with other people so we can keep the word going. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you here next time.
Thank you for listening to Harnessing Your Wealth with Billy Peterson. Before we declare the race official, please click the follow button so you can be notified when new episodes become available. For more information about today's show, please check out the show notes. Visit our website at www.petersonws.com or give us a call at 801-475-4002. Once again, thank you for listening. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Peterson Wealth Services. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.